Oh, hello, and welcome to Aldente Rigamortis. I'm Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the Santrio.
And I'm the gamer in yellow.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta, and be critically silly doing it. And tonight we're taking a step back to move forward with Summer Break 2017. So, back in 2019, we covered a story called Summer Break, which was part of the Curtisville stories by Pratt 99.
Mm-hmm.
And like they have a ton of stories, and we covered a bunch of them set in Curtisville, this like whimsical horror kind of setting they've come up with on the West Coast of North America. And yeah, we covered Summer Break back then in 2019. And since then, we actually got a message that I totally didn't forget about.
Of course not. Why would you?
And it was that there was that they had done a retelling of Summer Break, i.e., Summer Break 2017. As well as we have also got a couple links for a bunch of other stories that were connected, like a prequel story and some like spin-off stories from things that were mentioned in that story. So
were those prequels and such set up the first time we read Summer Break, or no?
I'm not sure. I don't. So Summer Break was at the end of a series of stories that on Creepypasta.wiki, like at the bottom of each story had like a next and previous arrow, and so we followed that. I think for like a bunch of the stories, like Far Leith and the Curious Little Thing or something like that. Some of those stories, Summer Break kind of was the last one because like there was no other next. So, but we covered all the stories prior to that one. I guess like the author here, Pratt, decided to do some other prequel, like a prequel or some other spin-off stories, either since or maybe before that, and just add it because it wasn't like 100% necessary to the plot. But yeah, so we're gonna cover Summer Break 2017, which is according to Pratt was a retelling of Summer Break. Since this is the end of summer, I figured this would be a great spot to put this story to do the story. So just as this story begins summer, we're ending summer. So you can check out Summer Break 2017 on Creepypasta.wiki, along with all of the other Pratt stories of Curtisville and associated stories. But before we get too far ahead, now that we've gone to that little diatribe, let's give our initial recommendations. I'm not going to recommend it.
You sound so sad.
I'm also not going to recommend it.
Well, fuck you guys. I'm going to give it a partial.
Okay. Maybe you can shed some light onto the story that I didn't see, and maybe it'll change my my view. I don't think it'll ever change Mikey's. I mean, his is immutable.
No. Set in stone always.
Yeah, he will die on hills.
Yes.
Multiple hills.
He has died on multiple hills and been resurrected multiple times.
Yeah. But let's find out why we gave the story those non-recommendations or partial recommendations. Starting with the rundown. So featuring Nair. Partially Nair anyway, until like halfway through the story, until like a few paragraphs late, like into the story.
Yes.
So Nair is going over the death of a person named Ellie Lambert, who, according to the official records, died of an aneurysm while asleep. But according to Amanda, younger sister of Vanessa, who are involved in the incident as well, I think, Ellie's death involved a situation where Nair shot a phantasmal beast version of Ellie's consciousness when it left her body. They appear to still be at the scene of the crime, maybe? Anyway, much to Vanessa's scoffing for traversing shady creepypasta sites, Amanda shows Nair a story that might help reveal things regarding the weirdness of this current case. So the story, and that story is Summer Break, the same story that we covered back in 2019, and the earlier version of the current tale, albeit a bit less whimsically modern fantasy than before. So in this story that we now are suddenly starting reading, Olivia, the narrator of that tale, is going to summer camp, but as she is waiting on the bus and reading a newspaper, she recalls the story from a few years prior that her weird triplet sisters told her about the camp, some local fires, some deaths, and an urban legend in their hometown of Curtisville. Apparently, while the previously mentioned big fire and some deaths were being looked into across town, Olivia's sisters encountered a strange phantasmal entity at their window of an obnoxious girl from their school who was holding a severed hand of another victim of weirdness that night. And after they shot a flare gun through their window to try and get rid of the apparition and getting in trouble with their parents and authorities, they ran down to their yard and, amidst some dogs that were there as well, chased a strange gray headless figure around their house, around their property, before finding an even stranger photo in among the end result. The photo had 5 girls hovering off the ground by an old wall, their faces smeared and like blurred. This same photo that they showed Olivia years prior slipped out of the newspaper Olivia was now reading on the bus going to her camp, despite the fact that it had supposedly been locked away in one of the sisters' desks at home. The photo shows the same thing, the girls hovering above the ground in front of that wall with the smeared faces, but now there are 4 girls in the photo, not 5. We then cut forward again to Nair in the present from the wraparound part of the story. In finishing reading the story we have just read, and the story, I guess, on Amanda's iPad or something, and upon noting its strangeness, asks what it has to do with the current situation. You and me both, Nair, but we'll get to that. When a scream is heard downstairs, the mayor, by the way, this all took place in the mayor's house, apparently, saw something shocking amidst a pile of presents when the family dog was snooping about, as dogs sometimes do, in the pile. There's a box, and when unwrapped, it reveals the same hand, though now desiccated, from Olivia's sister's story. And it's holding the photo of the girls hovering off the ground. Except now there's 3 girls in the photo. Finn? I guess for now? Yeah, that's the story of Summer Break 2017. Yeah. So I suppose with that out of the way, we shall move on to Everyone Tolerates the Grammar Inquisitions at this point. So I actually went through and read over my over the previous version of the story, Summer Break, like the original version of the story, and also went through my previous notes, grammar like Inquisition wise, because I have all my notes like saved in separate documents, to see if there were any notes that I had done for this story that maybe overlapped. So I have since removed a bunch of ones that we actually covered in that episode, that I had already
done that.
Yeah, well, I was like, I should maybe like check to make sure I'm not like redoing the same like grammar Inquisition that we covered like 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
Probably 5 now. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, 5 years.
Yeah. So I believe what I have now are new issues of the in the iteration of the story, not covered from the previous version. So Just that my little heads up for my grammar inquisition here.
Okay.
So starting with this one here. That fact was true, verified by the Renee police report with a death certificate signed by the chief medical examiner at a Renee morgue. A Renee morgue? How many morgues they got in this place anyhow? Yo! I think it's supposed to be the Renee morgue.
Why can't there be multiple?
I guess there could be multiple, but
Like seriously.
I guess it could be. I might be in the nitpick note, but like it felt like it should be the Renee morgue, not a Renee morgue. Like I don't think Renee is a big town that it has like multiple morgues.
You don't know. How do you know?
I honestly don't. I tried looking up Renee and Swanwick, the town that's like neighboring
I'm
Renee.
pretty sure it said that Renee is the town where they sent this all this forensic stuff to, because like they had the best technology and the best this, the best that, the best trained people to do it. So it doesn't sound like it's a small hick town.
Okay, maybe you're right. It's still like it's weird that like I still think it's odd that like even like a large town would have like multiple morgues, but like maybe I'm in the wrong there. But
regardless, even if it just said like the Renee morgue, like that's fine, because there still could be multiple, even if you're just saying it's the.
Yeah, fair.
But yeah, it does sound weird saying a Renee morgue. You're right. So yeah.
Okay. I'll move on.
Yeah.
However, she assured me I wasn't one to make stuff up, and unlike Amanda, who's a bit of a scatterbrain, I seem to be a generally sensible and rational individual. Wait, what? Is this Olivia or Vanessa saying this to Nair, or like is the I supposed to be like Vanessa, or is it supposed to be Nair? Like, it's like, however, she assured me. To me, it feels like it shouldn't be like. However, she assured me I wasn't one to make stuff up, and unlike Amanda, blah blah. It feels like that to be Vanessa saying like, so like, however, she assured me she wasn't one to make stuff up, and unlike Amanda, who's a bit of a scatterbrain, she seemed to be a generally sensible and rational individual.
Yeah, because like Nair isn't bringing this stuff up right now.
Yeah, and like I was almost wondering if it's like perhaps this is like almost it's supposed to be like a dialogue, but like we don't get the quotations for a dialogue, so it's like
yes, it would be like, however, she assured me, quote, I wasn't one to make stuff up, and unlike Amanda, blah blah blah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it should just those eyes should be changed to she. Just so like we know that it's Vanessa that is being referenced, not like somebody else. So, but I'll move on to the next thing. As my dad pulled the station wagon over into a spot onto the main street, I looked over. So this might be, again, that might be a nitpick nook thing. I think it should either be pull the station wagon over into a spot on the main street, or on Main Street, not onto the main street.
I think it's fine.
Yeah, I've read it I've read this over a couple times.
I guess.
I think this is just like me being really nitpicky, but like it feels like the two didn't need to be there in the writing.
Yeah, I can sort of see that. So the station wagon into a spot on the main street.
Yeah, onto the main street. It's like pull the station wagon over into a spot on the main street, or onto the main street, or on Main Street. Like I think
all of them work, to be honest.
Maybe you're right. I might just be really like lounging the nitpick nook here, but it bugged me the first time, and then like
that's fair.
So but I'll move on to the next couple that I have that are actually just like they should be compounded words. So like through the bug-flecked windshield, I could see a crowd of fidgety kids and their parents. Windshield is two separate words in the story. I think it should be one word, windshield.
I'm going to say bug-flecked needs a dash in between.
Yeah, well, there is a dash. There is a dash in bug-flecked.
Okay, I didn't Google it. Or sorry, I didn't Control F it to check first.
Fair. And then the other two I have are about backpack, which is like I think backpack should be one word, not two separate words, which in the story it is like picking up my sleeping bag and backpack. I hurried, blah, 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 blah. And then later on, it's I was just glad I stowed my delicate camera and binoculars in my backpack and not in my suitcase, blah, 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 blah.
There also has a forward pack, like a front pack.
No, that's
or
not
a fanny
a thing.
pack.
Fanny
pack's a
pack,
thing,
maybe.
though.
Yeah, fanny packs are a thing. But also, fanny pack, I believe, is actually one word as well.
Ah, shit. I'm trying to help.
You're trying. You're trying so hard.
Yeah.
And
Fanny
then,
pack is 2 words, actually. It's
oh,
2
is it?
words.
Okay. My
Yeah.
bad. All right. All right. Am I wrong about backpack then?
No, you're not. Because why would there be consistencies, right?
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to the English language.
I hate it.
But the next one I have is speaking of inconsistencies. This one here, hippopotamus, my butt, snapped Kyoko. I'll have you know, blah blah blah, and it's like goes on. So the whole time the story references one of the older sisters of Olivia as Kyoto, but this is the one case in the story where for some reason her name is now Kyoko. So I think this is just like a simple typo where like they accidentally put a K instead of a T.
Oh yeah, you're totally right. I did not even catch that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, I've read the story now like 3 times.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because like I read the story once and then I read the original story to try and see what the differences were, and then I read this story again just so I was like, because I read it the first time I read the story, I wasn't sure if I was in like a bad mood or not, because like I was like kind of like I was just confused by some things in the story. So I reread it after I'd read the original story to try and see if like maybe a fresh day, like as a day had gone by, so like a fresh mind had maybe like might like help shed some light on like my issues with the story. So
you do this in a such more like a higher intelligence level than I do. Me, I'm like,
because I care so much.
me, I'm like, I finished dinner. It's like, shit, it's 11 o'clock. I should start reading. It's tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's fine. I got through the intro. I'll finish it in the morning.
Yeah. God damn it. I'm glad my co-hosts are so invested in this show.
No, it's not that. We're bringing different energy levels because, like, it's like if you do a whole bunch of reading, that's like your wheelhouse. If you're like super lazy, I guess, and you just kind of want to read it as is at face value immediately,
or if you're just like
in a rush state.
It's like it's the difference between like somebody who's like, man, I'm really into creepypastas and that, and then there's just that one guy who just like keeps getting a link to creepypastas by their friend. It's like, I guess I'll give this a read.
Yeah. Welcome to me joining the show.
Yeah, basically. To be fair, like I've had moments like that as well, like with like in real life when somebody like sends me a creepypasta link, and like I will get like say later, but like sometimes my first like initial is like, all right, I'll check that out. And, like a couple of days go by, I was like, oh, I should check that link that I was sent. But yeah, so I'll move on to the next thing I have here though. She was a dwarfish, rather unpleasant born again twit of a 7th grader with a fanatical streak. So I feel like born and again should be connected by a dash. In the same way that 7th grader in the story in the sentence is like 7th grader has a dash between 7th and grader. I feel like born again should also have that because it's like born again Christian or born again like evangelical kind of thing.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next one I have. Up until now, I thought it was just a regular run-of-the-mill flare gun, and the burglar was one of the Jane's skank toadies snooping around, trying to come up with some dirt on us. So I feel like it should be one of Jane's skank toadies, not the there, like the Jane is not needed. Like, I mean,
you don't know. Maybe her gang.
I literally have in my nose. Like, I mean, unless I like, I mean, I know these characters are pretty derisive about this Jane character already from the story. So, but I don't think they'd refer to her as the Jane, like some kind of beast or some kind of monster.
You don't know.
It's the Jane. And then the next one I have here is, well, we were so peeved by this creepy in what we thought was just a costume that we decided to make a citizen's arrest. So I think creepy should actually just get rid of the Y there. And so it's like, we were peeved that this creep in what we thought was just a costume. Blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
And then my last one here is, but we did but we did. We find something interesting. I know it's dialogue, but I was pretty sure that second we should not be there. Like, but we did find something interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or unless it was trying to say, but we did find something. Like, unless it was like we're trying to repeat it like that, but like doesn't seem like that. I think it seems like it was just like an accidental duplicate word. So, but that's the end of my grammar inquisition. Again, I had a bunch of other ones, but I removed them because they were duplicates from back when we covered the original summer break story. Mikey, the E stands for evil. What do you have?
All right. Quote here. We all decided to ignore her completely, hoping that maybe she would just get bored and bother someone for a change. I feel it needs to be someone else for a change.
I agree.
Bother
Yeah.
anyone.
And then the next one I have here, it's dialogue, but I'm still not giving it a pass. It reminded me of raw bread dough.
Yep.
Yes, all of these.
Well, this one was from my original my grammar inquisition, and it was supposed to be. It reminded me of dough.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, well, this is a revised edition of the story. Why is there still so many grammar issues?
Yeah,
Good point, actually.
I have a big thing about that in my actual thoughts, but yeah, this story. So the big thing I noticed between Summer Break, the original one, and Summer Break 2017, aside from the wraparound story, which is not in the original, it seems like the original, like this version is, like the 2017 retelling isn't really a retelling so much as it's a copy pasta of the original story in the middle of another story, and they've sort of the narrator has reduced or changed the names of like certain whimsical creatures and stuff like that from the previous story and made them more mundane human like groups rather than like monsters and stuff. Like when it talks about the disappearances were blamed on like goths or junkies or scenes and stuff like that. Those in the original one, those are like vampires and werewolves and ghouls and stuff. So it's not exactly a retelling so much as just like the same story, just thrown like put into another story, like put into another story, and some of the names were changed. But like all the same problems seem to have still exist.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I have a conjunction junction.
All right. And next stop, Conjunction Junction. Doot, doot.
And yet, on other days, everything seems to be going great until a sinkhole suddenly opens up while you were rollerblading, or a small plane crash lands into your backyard, taking out your treehouse. But I wasn't thinking about that at that moment. It was a fine weekday morning, and a cool breeze was blowing from the Pacific. It felt good, but I knew this refreshing breeze wasn't going to last once we reached the mountains, and by the time we got to the Willow Creek Writers' Camp, it was going to be stifling hot and muggy. But it was what they told me afterwards that scared me even more than any horror movie or scary campfire story out there, because the incident actually occurred in my hometown and would spawn a new urban legend. But didn't the police find the remains of only 6 kids along with their parents in their burnt out mansion? It also sprouted antlers from the top of its bestial head, and long black talons burst from its spidery fingers. Its eyes grew huge and red as it broke out of its prison and made good its escape into the dark forest area around town, venturing forth to devour domestic animals before eventually turning its murderous attention on various townsfolk, including its entire family. It was sounding so much like that of another infamous mutant misanthrope who was currently terrorizing local residents in the southern New Jersey area. And the Chalmers mutated seventh daughter who ate all those animals, then all those Jehovah's Witnesses, before ripping her family to shreds and then setting the house on fire. And they say she's still out there. And I suppose this Frankenstein kid also killed those two girls on Azalea Ave as well. And it was also a school night, Izumi quickly chimed in. And that's when you saw the thing crawling around? It was shocking. Absolutely shocking. It was pitch black, but we could see enough because it was pale gray and luminous looking, but I knew who it was. It was Jane Woodley's face. It reminded me of raw bread dough, Kyoto continued on, soft and pale as a mushroom, and then these two hands appeared below this thing's face. But she got let go with a citation when witnesses came forward saying that she wasn't anywhere near the Chalmers mansion when the blaze took place. It was like a fat, headless human made out of soiled rags and jellyfish slime. Really gross looking. It was like something straight out of a Looney Tunes cartoon. And by then, Mom, Dad, and most of the neighbors were out, wondering if they had finally gone off the deep end. But we find something interesting, said Izumi brightly. And you know what I found most frightening about the picture now? It's weird, I finally replied. Like the Marx Brothers meet H.P. Lovecraft. And you're not even supposed to be on those creepy story websites. It shattered the still night air of the mayor's residence, causing all three of us to bolt upright, then scramble downstairs in the direction of the spacious living room bar lounge. It was in a pile of unopened presents. The small bespectacled man muttered, struggling to hold the tall woman up. Its shriveled, blackened digits clutched a torn and dirty photo, like the one mentioned in the story, showing those girls hovering in space in front of what looked like an old stone wall, blurry, watery smears for faces. Finn.
Wow. Congrats. You have made this story more confusing. I didn't think that was possible.
Happens when we read just the sentences that start with words that they probably shouldn't, like its, ands, or buts, because there's always better words to use.
Yes. Also, you pointed out, like you reading certain sentences in this, also pointed out something that I think I missed in my grammar inquisition, but I feel like we should probably bring up. There are also a lot of run-on sentences in this story.
Yes.
That I felt like they aren't like there's some of them that I gave a pass, but some of them was like this really needs to be like chopped a bit, like and like
Well, I'm pretty sure I mentioned run on the last time we did this story, so
Yeah.
I left it out.
yeah, especially since
Yourself said that like you should bring up the same problems if the problems aren't fixed. Because
I know. Well, I didn't know like I forgot. I didn't have your notes, guys, to pull from. I had what my
Like
notes
you
were.
said, not you, but that's fine.
Okay, my bad. Sorry.
It's fine.
But yeah, so gamer. What do we got?
I only got a couple. Oddly enough, I only had these two. I missed pretty much, actually not pretty much, literally every single grammar related thing that you guys brought up, I did not catch. Or if I caught it, I was just like, whatever.
Now the question
Didn't bother
remains.
making a note of it.
Question is, are the two notes that you have were they previously mentioned in the in your reading of the original story?
You want to give me a few minutes to go check?
I mean, if you want, like
No.
Okay, no.
For the couple of minutes it's going to take for me to do this is fine.
That's fair, yeah.
So my first one is literally just the where is it in the story itself? Yeah, okay. When the actual story itself starts,
yep.
The second and third paragraph both start with as, and I don't really like the look of that personally. A little variety would be nice.
Okay.
I don't know if it's necessarily like a grammar thing. It's just like it's too much repetition.
All right, fair.
In my opinion. And then this next one. It was a fine weekday morning and a cool breeze was blowing from the Pacific. It felt good, but I knew this refreshing breeze wasn't going to last once we reached the mountains. And by the time we got to the Willow Creek Writers Camp, it was going to be stifling hot and muggy. So when I first read that, I stumbled over a little bit, mainly because when it gets to saying, and by the time we got to part, when I read that as a flow of time passing, as in like, and not like a continued assumption of the future like it was supposed to be. Because like, it's saying like, the breeze wasn't going to last, and by the time we got to the camp, it made it sound like it was a scene wipe. Because they're like standing in front of the bus talking about how the breeze is now and they're going to go to the camp. Or no, what's fuck? Yeah, and by the time
it felt good, but I knew that this refreshing breeze wasn't going to last once we reached the mountains.
Yeah, and by the time we got to the Willow Creek Writers Camp, as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, now we're at the Writers Camp.
No, yeah,
but it's not.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like it to me, I read it like the way I think it's supposed to be read, and then you read it like, but I understand how you didn't get that the first time.
It's literally just the word "and" that made me think that it was a continuation of like time moving.
Fair, yeah.
Because if it just said by the time, actually, it's the "and" and also "got." If it was "get," it would sound more in the moment and not passing ahead. Like I know this is all told in past tense, but in this situation I feel like it gave me like scene whiplash.
Okay.
Like trying to build this in my head because of the tense issue.
Yeah.
So welcome to my tense talk. Someone had to do it.
Wow.
That's normally a thing you do.
Actually something that you kind of brought up. I'm not gonna lie, like rereading the story, reading this part specifically, and then like also trying to figure out what the story connects with the original, with the wraparound. I did have like a sort of a situation where like I forgot for a second what the point of the story was to like the overarching like revelation.
Oh, me too. As soon as it snapped back to the wraparound at the end of the story, I got whiplash a second time.
Yeah,
honestly.
Well, even within the Olivia story itself, like she's on the bus and like she's reading, flipping through that newspaper, which I've got a whole thing about the newspaper to begin with already, but and then like we get into this story about like from a few years prior to like the past story with her sisters and like the whole like the weird hand, and then we get the photo drop, and then it's the same photo that was in that slipped out of her newspaper that she's reading on the bus. I was like, right, she was in that moment. It was like, wow, this story took like way too long to get us to the revelation. Like it almost, I feel like I had a kind of a gamer moment, like a you moment, where like I really felt like that photo should have like slipped out, and like we should have gotten like that slipping out of the newspaper, and that triggering the memory of like her sisters telling her about the stuff.
Even if it was just the back of a photo, so you don't see it.
Yeah, and then like she flips, yeah,
just so
exactly.
you know, this entire story that's being told within this story,
oh my god,
is about yeah, it's about that that photo. So at least you'll attempt to keep that in your head as you're going through, but like it just kind of jumps to the inner story.
Yeah, I feel like the structure of the story, like for like the time frame, like for the framing and stuff of that, is kind of just really wonky, and really could be refined. But yeah,
that's pretty much all I got for grammar.
Okay. Well, on to actual thoughts. So I'm going to start with this one here. In other words, an ectoplasmic astral body that could detach itself during deep sleep and sally forth in animal shape or something even more monstrous. Kind of like a werewolf, only without the pain, or without the painful, embarrassing body contortions and sprouting of fur and fangs. Not a curse cast by some gypsy fortune teller or a devil, but your darker animal nature made incarnate. So it does eventually get there in explaining this creature, like with using this reference and stuff like that. But I feel there's some wording in here that could be like maybe that also makes it just it makes it a little bit more confusing, or like it didn't need to be there. It was kind of unnecessary and kind of it kind of convolutes what they're trying to say. So like when it got to the part, it's like kind of like a werewolf, only without the painful, embarrassing body contortions and sprouting of fur and fangs. And I immediately just thought, I was like, so not like a werewolf at all.
Yeah,
that's like the werewolf.
Yeah, like it does, and like it does explain the situation, and like but this part specifically kind of like that reference kind of like muddies the water a bit. Like it is kind of like a werewolf in that the person becomes something like an animalistic monster or creature in some form, like but it's their consciousness shifted. It is kind of like a werewolf, but it is different. But the way they use the werewolf analogy, it kind of muddies the explanation a bit. So the way I kind of would have fixed it would be like, in other words, an ectoplasmic astral body that could detach itself during deep sleep and sally forth into an animal shape or something more monstrous, kind of like a werewolf, not caused by a curse cast by a gypsy fortune teller or a devil, but your darker animal nature made incarnate. So that to me makes it more like getting rid of the part where it's like, except for like the painful, embarrassing body contortion, blah, blah, blah. I think getting rid of that helps kind of clarify like the shifting nature, the animal shifting nature of this thing without making it kind of muddied in its explanation. Because it's like kind of like sort of like a psychic. You're basically like you're astral projecting somehow, and it's creating this kind of spectral form that is like an animalistic creature. So it's like
but your meat prison is still the way it is.
Yeah, and apparently, if you get shot, or if your astral form gets shot, you die for real. Because
die in the astral world, you die for real.
yeah, you die in astral form, you die for real. Yeah, that's kind of what I got out of it. Like it's basically like a video game, like because you're in, it's sort of like a psychic video game, like kind of thing. Like you send out your avatar, but if you die in the game, you die for real.
Yeah.
So, which is like, that's the shittiest werewolf creature ever, or like shifting monster ever. Because like, if you get shot, you get, oh, you know what it is? It's like in Shadowrun. Sorry, Mikey. You get dump shock when you do a deep dive into VR.
Pretty much.
Except in this case, it's psychic feedback. So you get like horrible psychic, dump shock psychic feedback that kills you. But yeah, so
You
I
figure they would
just
have
felt
some resistance to like damage as an astral form, not just like bullets, my only weakness.
yeah, especially yeah, exactly. Like unless they had like unless silver still also affects like silver is what actually killed her or is what killed the beast.
That rhymed almost.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it like yeah, just I feel like removing like the part where it's like almost like a werewolf, but like without blah, 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 it's like get rid of that because like you were almost there in helping explain this thing. Like maybe even add a little bit extra of like a psychic avatar linked to the body, and if it gets hurt, like the person gets hurt, kind of thing. I don't know. And
It's
then
been
moving,
moneyed.
yeah, and then moving on to the next thing I have with this quote. A little about Amanda, by the way. She's the exact opposite of Vanessa. Small, blonde, with a delicate frame, made even more wispy by her total vegetarian diet. Who's Vanessa? Or Amanda, for that matter? Like, they're like Vanessa's referenced like 3 times before, at least before this, and as if we should know them. And like, yes, there are some the story does kind of tie to some previous stories as it's mentioned. Like, it's
Wow.
it's supposed to be from the perspective of different characters that were featured in Ellie Lambert and Short Hoggers, which we will cover at some point down the road.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is it seems like we need that previous information.
Yeah, and that's my problem about the story as well. Is like there should be stuff in this story that introduces them. Like you don't have to go full blow, but like we need a little bit more context in this story on those characters because like that's. In novels and in other like in short stories and so that like if you're bringing a character from another story, you still introduce that character in the current story.
We know that
in some way.
I tried making a list of the cast to keep track of it.
Yeah.
We know that Amanda is Vanessa's younger sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't know who Nair is. Like this narrator.
No.
But like and that's going to be something in like I'm going to reference in a few minutes too. Like but yeah. About Nair, but sorry, continue.
Yeah, we don't really know much about Vanessa.
We don't.
Vanessa is the opposite of Amanda, and Amanda is like a small blonde nerd.
Yeah. So Vanessa is a tall like brunette with an athletic frame, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. yeah. Not a vegetarian as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, yeah, like that's something that keeps coming up in the story. Like there needs to be more context added in this story when when they're introducing characters. Like it sort of falls flat if we don't know, if we just kind of get tossed into this story with these characters.
And it's one thing if there's like 4 characters in the whole story, but there's so many.
Yeah.
The ones that I wrote down, I may have missed some, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I wrote down 11. I may have missed a couple.
It's possible. Yeah. Like also where they are, like that needs to also be established at the beginning of the story. Like where are they where like Ellie died? Is Ellie in the mayor's like house? Because they were upstairs apparently and they heard a scream in the mayor's house and they ran down the stairs to find the mayor and his wife.
Maybe Nair is like the child of the mayor?
Maybe I honestly got the impression that it was a cop or like a detective of some kind, like that Nair was. But like that needs to be established at some point at the beginning of the story. Like we get there's media res, and then there's just like not finishing your story with like vital information. Like there's a proper way to do like I'm in media res where like the characters do get context to the situation, but like I don't know, like I was left kind of floundering as to like I was just like kind of going scene for scene. It's like, all right, I guess we're somewhere we're sort of in a nebulous space right now. Oh, okay, we're up. I guess we're near Ellie's body or something because like they're maybe going over at the crime scene. Oh wait, the mayor's like screaming from downstairs, so they rush downstairs. I guess we were upstairs from the mayor in the mayor's house, and like I guess that's where Ellie died. I guess is Ellie Lambert like related to the mayor or something? Like I just was not sure because that we didn't get a proper establishing shot.
A lot of I guess this is that. Moving on, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that is one of the big detriments to the story is that we Like even in media res stories, you get establishing shots. You don't
Again,
just
it
get
still
like,
might be partially our fault for reading the last story
I-
in the sequence.
except it's not the last story in the sequence.
Okay,
Like-
well, not the first story.
Like here's the one. So specifically, like, so again, like the author's note for the story was that this was an updated retelling of Summer Break, which I decided to dust off and retell. I'll get to that in a second. Then we also get from the perspective of different characters that were featured in Ellie Lambert and Short Hoggers. So Ellie Lambert is its own single, like, is a story like that we will cover. Short Hoggers is one that we're going to cover, but we got to cover 3 other stories before we cover Short Hoggers because it's the last in a line of stories.
Oh, okay.
Like Short Hoggers is the like 4th installment of a last day of October series of stories. So like I feel like we should probably cover the first 3 of those ones before we get to Short Hoggers. So it's sort of, yeah, but like, so I'm just like, it's sort of a mess in terms of establishing things from previous stories. Like it's cool and fine to have like characters from other stories and like reference those stories, but you got to also reference those stories a little bit more properly than this story does. Not just like name drop as if we should know these characters, as if we've read the exhaustive list of Curtisville stories, which we covered some of them. We've read some of them, but we haven't covered like the list. Like the full list of it. So,
and I mean, it does mention some of them because, like, when it brings up like Amanda says Amanda's Vanessa's younger sister, blah 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 blah,
yeah,
and is the opposite of Vanessa. Like, we do get some establishing shots, just not everyone has an establishing shot.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we know who Amanda is, but who's Vanessa? Like, what's her deal? Kind of thing. And like, I know she's probably from another story, but like, you know what this kind of feels like? And I brought this up last night, I think, to you, Gamer. This story kind of felt like an SCP entry where there's like suddenly links to other stories from like character names that are referenced.
Or more along the lines of a lot of it's redacted.
Yeah,
and we don't have clearance for it, aka we haven't read the other stories to get clearance.
Yeah, well, there's that, but also I think it's more like, yeah, like, you know how like SCP entries always have like, it's like, oh, like doctor, according to Dr. Blah, 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 and then like that person's name is like its own entry that we have to go read. So it's a rabbit hole of a Curtisville series story. And it's cool. Like, again, like it's fun to have like in lore like settings and spin-offs and stuff like that. It's just in the story that you're writing and you're telling to the audience, to an audience now, you do need to establish some things so that you're not like leaving people in the dark entirely.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm trying to get at with the like who's Vanessa kind of thing.
Yep.
But I'll move on. She also consumes fantasy and horror comics by the trunkful, as well as classic weird and fantastical literature. One of which she showed me the werewolf astral projection example titled The Camp of the Dog by Algernon Blackwood. I'm just going to add that to my list of stories to read because I actually haven't really touched on Algernon Blackwood in my own like reading of like weird fiction and such. I know he's one of, like Lovecraft's not contemporaries, but like he's like one of the inspirations for Lovecraft. Like when Lovecraft was writing, like he had a bunch of stories already out there. So yeah, it might be interesting to check that out. I'm going to actually put that in. I'm legitimately just like, I'm adding that to my list.
You're doing that right now.
Yeah. When I read this part, I was like, I'm going to like save that. Next thing I have here. This is actually kind of what I mentioned earlier when I said like I got the impression this person, the narrator, was a cop or something like along those lines. Amanda even called up this chatty Nisei friend of hers on Skype to get her permission for me to post up her experience on Reddit. So my initial impression of the story, like because the character knew a bunch of stuff about like the death of Ellie and all that at the beginning, that this was a cop, and like, are they posting things on Reddit? Like no, I know some Reddit no sleep stories, like the narrator are like cops or like authority figures, like, or like they have authoritative jobs or like investigative jobs, and they're like posting these on Reddit no sleep in fiction, to try and like get word out or like try and like make sense of something, like crowdsource, like make sense of stuff of that.
But like asking for input back though, instead of just here it is.
That sometimes that's what they do actually in Reddit no sleep, like in fiction. Like that's why all the comments are supposed to be replied in fiction. Like you're supposed to treat it as if like this is something that's happened and you're trying to help out this person. And that's how we get like long series of Reddit no sleep stories, is because like the person has taken some of that feedback from the comments and like adapted the storyline, kind of like a mini ARG, like augmented reality game, where like the audience, the reader is part, and the audience are part of the world in the fiction. But like for this, a bit more info clarity again on the character up front would have been nice to know who this person is. Like because right now they're just narrator. Like we don't.
Mhm.
I think almost similarly to Olivia, because like I don't recall Olivia having a name in the original Summer Break. I could be wrong. I may have I've forgotten that. But I think she was also a Nair until we got this story where we found out that was Olivia.
Okay, but most stories we read are Nairs, hence why we have
I know
Nair as a character, quote unquote.
Yeah. Well, that's
why is it less acceptable now?
For this one, because there's so much we just don't know that like just added on to like it's the extra weight on the pile of things that we don't know about this story. It's just like it makes it more pronounced. Like I really could use like who is this character? What is their role in all this? Are they an investigative character of some kind? Like are they just like a teen that's investigating, like a teen gumshoe, or are they an actual like authoritative like detective or something?
Yeah, like especially because there's so many other characters that are referenced as well. So like having one that is just a blank slate, which might be on purpose, so it's a self-insert kind of deal. Yeah,
but then, like down the road, we're gonna find out that Nair from this story was actually somebody like in other stories. Like, that's fine. That is usually fine and stuff like that. It's just in this point, it kind of just kept bugging me because I didn't have any context for anything that was going on in the story. Like they weren't establishing any shots.
The guy who hates in media res stuff gets thrown into this in the middle of it.
Yeah, this
where
is
it's
like the mother
I
of all,
should have read the previous stories, like regardless of what you said.
Yeah, you for some context, like for some actual context for us, for the audience, Gamer actually contacted me like 2 days ago. Is like, should we be reading other stories? Like, no, we're gonna read this one and then we're gonna read those other ones after.
Specifically because it says Summer Break and we have to fit the theme.
Yeah, because I wanted to post this on like the end of Summer Break, basically. Yeah. So back to the story itself and like my quotes and stuff like that. Also, I had to double check. I was like curious, like what's a Nisei? And so Nisei is Japanese for second generation, and it's the son or daughter of Japanese immigrants who were born and educated in the United States. I was like, oh, okay, so it's a term, like it's a specific term for second generation immigrants, basically.
Oh, I thought that was someone's name. To be perfectly honest,
I wasn't sure if it was like somebody's name. I honestly, because of the story having the tie to the original story iteration that had like a bunch of fantastical things, I wasn't sure if like Nisei was like another like creature or animal or like mystical thing. And no, it's just a term for second generation Japanese immigrants.
We know like where this takes place aside from the like.
I believe if it takes place near, so I couldn't find like towns, so I feel like most of these towns are fictionalized. But from what I've gathered of the Curtisville stories, they take place on the West Coast, like somewhere in Oregon or Washington State.
It seems like there's like a lot of like Japanese influence stuff going on.
That makes sense because the Northwest actually has a large Japanese and Asian like immigration population.
Okay, fair. So, I don't live there, so I don't know these things.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'll move on to the next thing I have here. This one I kind of like. This I was getting a little frustrated, so I'm just gonna read this how I posted, how I commented and such. So this is the quote. She would later confess to me that she greatly disapproved of her tween sister being on those weirdy infested story sites. And she thought that Olivia was overreacting to something her older sisters told her, and quite possibly even making all it up just to gain publicity and trophy points on her websites. Oh, yeah! Ah! Like another name dropped and we have no idea who it was. And then like I'm able to follow along with the broad strokes of the plot line, and like the wraparound story. But it does feel like characters are just name dropped, and like, again, going to what I was saying earlier, just like name dropped without any kind of context or proper introduction. I have an update on this one where it's like, okay, Olivia is soon mentioned as an online friend to Amanda, who wrote the story Summer Break that we read like a while back and is in this story. So we get that context like shortly after Olivia's name is dropped. But why couldn't we get that for everybody else? Yeah, I mean, it was really bugging me by this point, and I was only like, I think a page in on the story.
Yeah, that's like before the actual story itself.
Yeah, that was
on the story.
That was still in the wraparound, which is like only a couple of paragraphs before we go into the retelling, I do in quotes, of Summer Break. Then the next thing I have here is actually in the Summer Break story by Olivia. It felt good, but I knew the refreshing breeze wasn't going to last once we reached the mountains. And by the time we got to the Willow Creek Writers Camp, it was going to be stifling, hot, and muggy. Okay, so before we get like the Willows Creek Writers Camp, they're going to Camp Kimtu. Are they the same thing? Why do we have two names for the same place?
Like, I'm assuming it's a section of that camp specifically for writing.
Maybe that's it, but I know, like, maybe I'm starting to like develop into a Disney princess. I want to have more. I need more information.
Or less information, technically, because like your problem is that they're giving you multiple like titles for things. Where if it was just the writers' camp thing, that would have been fine.
Yeah, or if we can explain that, like Camp Kimtu is a part of Willow Creek, or Willow Creek's Writer Camp is a part of Camp Kimtu. Like clarify that those are the same thing, not just keep referencing two separate places. Again, I'm becoming Burt Gummer from Tremors 2. It's like, I believe I was denied vital, need to know information. Yeah, so that's my theme for the story. is that line from Tremors 2. So but I'll move on to the next thing I have, which is the newspaper that she's reading on the bus. So leafing absentmindedly through the pages of the usual weighty multiverse matters and elven celebrity scandals, I found myself wondering about what the 2 weeks at Camp Kimtu would be like. So it does mention that she leaves, like that she had this paper that she was going to like read through and such. But I really wish that it said newspaper specifically, because it did not click till the very end of the story when the mysterious photo from Olivia's past story slipped out of the pages of the newspaper that she was reading on the bus, that it occurred to me that this whole multiverse matters and elven celebrity thing was a newspaper, like a tabloid or something.
What else would it have been? Who are
I
you?
don't know.
Me?
I don't know.
You're pulling a me now, dude.
Well,
I apparently, yes.
Yeah, and earlier it says, however, in my glumness died away as soon as I started perusing my newly purchased paper.
Yeah, you know what?
Maybe it's just straight lined paper that she's just perusing through.
Well, she's what I legitimately like. I'm not joking. I'm not. This isn't a bit.
Yeah, I know.
Legitimately, I thought that like when it said paper early on, like the first time I read that, I thought it was like lined paper because she's like writing, because she's going to
that's the thing. Camp. Writing school or writing camp. So here's the thing. I agree with you, because also the first time. You go. I'm letting you finish. The first time I read the sentence, I'm with you, because I was like, paper, like writing paper, because writing. But then I reread it. I'm like, oh, okay, perusing it. Okay, and then it talks about scandals. Okay, it's a newspaper. Moving on. I got it eventually. I just had to read it a couple times. Please continue.
So did I, because I only realized it like even more so, like 100% confirmed that it was a newspaper when I reread the story a third time.
God damn.
It wasn't until like my third reading of the story when I got to that part where she's like got her newly purchased paper. I was like, which was right before the whole, I think, about the Elven celebrity scandal stuff. I was like, oh, it does say that it's a newspaper. It just says that it's a paper, though, and like that's confusing.
Welcome to the English language. We can't
Yeah.
just call everything one thing.
I know, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There is slang for things, and that's what they're using. And so, yeah. So anyway, yeah, that was something there.
She had been talking about money. Like I just gotten some new paper, you know.
Script. Yeah, so got some. Well, that would be like script or something like that. It wouldn't be like paper. Anyway, moving on.
That's fine.
Yeah. So the next thing I have here is 6 years ago. The year was 1999. I was 8 years old, while my sisters were 10 and were mischievous as hell, which wasn't at all surprising, seeing as they were probably half Siamese cat. It's funny. So for me, it was kind of funny at this point in the story, because it was like at this point we had the wraparound part, which I guess was in 2017 or like maybe a little bit earlier. Like it was supposed to take place, and then it cuts to like this blog story that like Amanda's sharing with the Nair about Olivia, which was posted in 2006. And then we're going back even further into an incident in 2003, and then followed up with a 1999 story thing. I'm like, at this point, I was like half expecting this to continue, just getting sidetracked further and further into the past. Yeah. I was just like,
All
back in the 1920s.
Yeah, back
Wow.
in the 1920s. So, yeah.
right. Technically, the statement is false. 6 years ago, the year was 1999. This was posted supposedly in July 2006.
Yes.
Therefore, 6 years ago was 2000.
Maybe it was like that event was like in 2005. Like maybe the story was told was posted in 2006, but it took place in 2005. It's
But
probably not
that
that.
doesn't help.
It might be. It might be a hiccup. It might be a hiccup. Yeah.
Based on the timing we get, that statement is wrong.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, there's some, and out of all the things that were changed in the retelling, again, I do in quotes, that definitely could have been done.
Yeah.
And speaking of the changes, let's go to the actual changes I was referencing earlier. So with this quote, of course, there were the usual complaints to the police, various residents pointing their fingers at the usual suspects, teenage pranksters and budding criminal masterminds, my sisters included. The local hard rock garage band, particularly the one my albino cousin Yukiko started. The goths, the emos scene, and stoners, as well as any foreign immigrants, especially the Chalmers. Okay, so this story really needs to calm down with its run-on sentences, because that was all one sentence, by the way.
Oh goddamn!
There's no period until the very end. And I've noticed a few of them. Like in my notes,
Are we out of grammar?
No, we are out of grammar. Also, I learned a new subculture group today. Maybe I learned it back at. No, I wouldn't have learned it from the previous version of the story, because this is where they were. They changed up the monsters to like subculture thing groups. So scenes. And I was like, what the hell are scenes? So I looked it up. It's like members of the scene subculture are referred to as scene kids, trendies, and scenesters. Scene fashion consists of skinny jeans, bright colored clothing, and signature hairstyles consisting of straight, flat hair with long fringes covering the forehead and bright colored hair dye. That's what a scenester is, or what a scene is. I guess it's in reference to like they're making a scene kind of thing. They're being flamboyant kind of thing.
All I got of that, correct me if I'm wrong, is like if a goth wore colors.
Yeah, but it's basically it's if a clown and a goth had a baby.
Okay.
They create a scene.
They would actually.
Yeah. But yeah, so also so like I've said earlier, I went back and read through the previous version of Summer Break, and noticed a lot of the fantastical elements that were mentioned in the previous version are missing in this version, or have been replaced with like more mundane things like other. So this story is basically copy pasted into Summer Break 2017, and then the names fantastical names have been like filed off. Like it said, I quoted like the earlier, like her sisters were like mischievous as hell, which wasn't at all surprising, seeing as they were probably half Siamese cat in the previous version of Summer Break is called like seeing how they were probably half Chick Charney, which we said in our previous episode on Summer Break that we discovered that Chick Charney was like a type of like owl, like mystical owl creature, cryptid.
Okay, but in this story, are they literally half cat?
Well, I think in this version it's supposed to be taken like kind of just like as like oh, you're like clever like a fox kind of person, or like it's sort of like that kind of like it's supposed to be an analogy.
Specifically,
I know
Chinese cat.
I know, but like the reason is because like the like all the other things, like the alternative like all those like the goth emo scenes and stoners and stuff like that, even the foreign emigrant, especially like the Chalmers, they're all in the original story. Those names are actually replaced with like vampires, ghouls, and whatnot, and then some kind of like alternative, like otherworldly humans who have emigrated, like the Chalmers.
Okay, and I get that, but this isn't just that story.
Except this is the main change between Summer Break and Summer Break 2017 is that they've the person the what we're reading like human like subculture groups and stuff like that, and like mundane versions of what was mentioned in Summer Break, the original one. And so I don't know how I feel about that, honestly, because as I recall, on the one hand, it makes this story much more easier to digest, because it's something that we it's familiar, like goths, emos, and all that kind of stuff. Like those are regular things. Those are normal, mundane people. But on the other hand, I really enjoyed that kind of magical realism aspect of the original story, where it was just like these things seem to be like there's like magical creatures like vampires and ghouls and stuff like that referenced as if they're every day. And it seemed like maybe like this person's living in some kind of like hidden world, or like some kind of like world where like those creatures are like the everyday, like they're normal. It's just
that's why I went like with those triplets. I went with them as like Neko girls or whatever the hell. Like they are cat girls, like because it says they are.
Well, yeah. Well, because it references that, yeah. And like, but in the original story, like they're actually more like owl people, or owl girls. But yeah, like I loved that about the original story. I remember like loving that about the original like Curtisville stories, is that like they had like even when they're referenced, like, where'd you get that flare gun? Like later on, it's like, oh, I got that from the library auction or something like that, or at the or somewhere like at the blah 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 at the something market. In the original story, it's the Goblin Market. Like it's a steampunk flare gun that they got from a goblin market. In this one, it's more mundanified. So it had me wondering, like sort of a creepypasta theory, is that what we're reading here is actually like the original story is the true version of what we're of what to read, and this version that Nair is reading, that we're reading as Nair is reading it, it's a version that's more mundane, almost like a glamour of the hidden world, like that this person has written in the story.
Yeah.
So it's like, so like that they are like Chick Charneys, and there's goblins, and there's like all these other weird like alternate humans and monsters and stuff like that are walking among us, but they're all hidden and glamored up. So even in the writing, even in these like articles that are posted online on like creepypasta websites, somebody who's mundane or like not in the know isn't going to read that stuff. They're gonna read it more like, oh, like the emos and goths and all that stuff. I really hope, personally, I prefer that to the idea that perhaps the writer has decided to downplay the sort of magical realism that was in the previous stories.
Yeah, maybe just because, as you said, to make it so you can connect more with it. But like, also, as you said, it made it unique. Because like, there's so many stories out there where it's just dudes.
Yeah, like that was the thing that really like drew me to the Curtisville stories, was that this like kind of this like magical realism where like these creatures are living among regular humans in like small towns and like stuff like that. Like that stuff is cool. It just needs to be explained a bit more in the world setting, and when you're elaborating on it. I think that's also what we brought up, was that like they're referencing it as if it's just no big deal, but it's like, okay, that's cool. maybe add a little bit more just to explain like how this is like how like this is okay every day kind of thing.
Is this Werewolf Cop one?
Yes, this
Or
is
Dog
Werewolf
Cop?
Cop. What this is the same world as Werewolf Cop and the
Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah, and like because that's the bunker that's like where like they go in and like with the gray man and the gray mist and stuff of that's in the woods. And there's
I'm
like that
slowly unlocking these vaults
Yeah.
in my mind the more you tell me about these. Like as soon as you told me Goblin Steampunk Flare Gun, I'm like, oh yeah.
yeah. Also, we did that story back in what threw me off because like when I went back, it's like when did we do this story? Like it must have been like years ago. It was years ago, but it was also only 2019.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a lot like farther down in our episodes.
That
But
being said,
apparently,
how many episodes have we done since then? That's why.
yeah, no, we've done a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I really enjoy like I kind of I'm a little worried that like this story is downplaying the fantastical element for the sake of like readability.
Yeah.
And I hope it doesn't like do that for future stuff. Like I hope like the author like keeps that kind of magical whimsy with the horror aspect that's going on in the stories, because that's the magic of these stories is the magical realism element.
I love the term like magical realism. Like I know
I love
some
it
people
so
will think it's like kind
It's
of counterproductive or counterintuitive, because magic isn't real and all
Yeah,
that.
but
As much as one person would fight me on that.
yeah, but it is actually a name for a genre of fantasy and fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's one
Yeah,
thing
like-
to think about magic as like super fantastical. You don't have to worry about if it makes sense or not. But like when it's actually grounded and like there's in a world that actually all makes sense,
Yeah.
it makes it so much cooler in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I really enjoyed that genre, like that idea. Like I think it's like why we like Shadowrun so much. Sorry, Mikey, again. Because there is an element of
And like
magical
the watch as well.
too. Yeah, and the watch, yeah, exactly. Like this hidden world or like this world that is alongside our own. Not everybody's in the know of it, but the people that are in the know of it treat it like the mundane. Like there is the whimsy, but it's like also treated like just like it's everyday life.
It's the secret world.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was gonna say I couldn't think of the jingle off the top of my head. I was gonna do it.
Yeah, exactly. It's I probably why I like the Secret World MMO so much as well. So, but
Oh, speaking of slight tangent, I know your computer isn't the best, but have you heard of the Once Human game that's out?
yes, I want to play it so bad.
I figured you would, because it's basically Fallout 76, but Secret World.
Yeah, Secret World and a little bit of like what happens if a bunch of SCPs just break out and like contaminate the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Before the tangent, please
Tangent
start
over.
showing up at our door. Yeah.
Yep.
I will continue on my thoughts here. So this is in regard to the Chalmers themselves. Just about everyone in town thought the missionary family from Australia was especially strange, for not only were they all blonde and met every normality standard from the 1950s, but also they were always on the happy side and so damn perfect with their Ned Flanders sort of Christian white bread lifestyle. They were even weird rumors, or that should be there were even, not they were even. There were even weird rumors swirling around that the Chalmers and their 7 kids were actually aliens, all genetically modified to closely resemble their cultural idea of the people they were trying to convert. And I was like, well, I mean, honestly, from what like is shown here, it does kind of fit the mold for Nordic aliens, which are basically like Aryan aliens. It's a type of like alien encounter where like people encounter like aliens who are human, but they're pale skinned, blonde haired, and blue eyed. But there's also something a little bit uncanny about them.
I'm hearing the word Aryan. I can't not think of it in a negative tone.
Oh no, yeah, no, you're right. But yeah,
Meanwhile, it's just like literally blonde and pale.
Yeah, pale, blonde, and blue eyed. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again,
someone had to ruin another thing for the world.
They ruined a lot of stuff.
They did. They really did.
But yeah, well, they just read that part. Is like, okay, that fits. I mean, it's like basically like the Nordic aliens. So that I can understand where that rumor is coming from. But I'll move on to the next thing I have here. Well, going back to Izumi's account of that infamous night. Okay, don't get me wrong. This has been an interesting yarn being spun to us. But does this have any at this point in the story, as I was getting to, like, because they just kept going on and on and on about like the evening, the infamous night, and like all this like backstory of the Chalmers and stuff. And I was like, does this have anything to do with the wraparound story? Like about
I
that girl who
completely forgot about it until it showed up again.
Exactly. It's like that's what the story is kind of suffering from. Is like it goes so long explaining something that you forget what the original context for like why the story is being explained in the first place. Like like what is the and I'm still left wondering like what is the connective tissues between this story, Summer Break, and the incident with the character who died from after they were their astral bestial form was shot. and all that kind of stuff. Like, what was that kind of it seemed like by the end of the story, we it seemed like the whole reason for all this was because they found that box with the gnarled hand that was referenced in the story and the photo that was referenced in the story, and it's progressed. So now there's 3 girls in the photo rather than the 4 that was in when Olivia found it, and 5 when her sisters found it. So it's like counting down to something, or it's
No, it's not necessarily counting down. Like
Well,
it is counting down. But do you understand why it's counting down?
kind of. But explain, please.
It's when it picks a new target, that's how many sisters that target has.
Oh,
That's literally all it is. So it could switch to another target, and that target could have 5 sisters. Then it goes up to 5. I think it's just that.
See,
it happens to be counting down.
I was thinking either that or it's it may not be counting down. It may not be specifically that because the person has sister like that number of sisters, but it might be that like it's using up a person in the photo, like some kind of magic. Like there's some kind of magic to the photo itself. That it's like each incident that happens, it's using up another girl in the photo. Like
I could also see that, yeah. And then something horrible will happen when it's all done.
And then we'll find
like every time it goes down, it has to actually pick someone who has that many siblings for some reason.
Yeah, because it does reference in the story, like that the sisters tell Olivia that like 5 girls went missing, and that's where we get the 5 girls in the photo. So like once we've had enough incidences, and this photo keeps popping up in these instances with like with less and less girls in the photo. When there's no girls in the photo, are they suddenly going to find 5 like the 5 dead girls basically? As it was some kind of part of some weird like sympathetic magic. It's part of it's clear this is all clearly part of a greater mystery that like Pratt's been trying to get through. But the way the story is, like, I really feel like the story's like on its own, it kind of fails, and like maybe as a whole, like with all these other stories, maybe it'll make more sense, and I'd recommend it. But like at this point, like this story itself needs more stuff in it to make itself stand on its own, as well as connect with this greater mystery. Because otherwise, this just seems like a chapter that we're only reading like a chapter of something, rather than
basically you handed me a novel, opened it halfway or 3/4 of the way through, and like read it, finish it. Don't worry about the first bit.
Yeah, and I mean I did. That's what it feels like to you. To me, it feels like I did the same thing, except I was told only to read this first chapter for like in this part, and it was like, and then we're like, but what about these other chapters, the beginning and after? Like, it's like no, read the chapter. It's like, oh, okay. I've done some, and like the person's like, I've edited this chapter, so it should make more sense. It's like,
yeah,
and it really didn't. But yeah, I'm getting to the end of my notes here.
No worries.
So the next thing here, this is in regards to the mayor's like there's a blood curdling scream, chatted the mayor's the still night of the mayor's residence, and the characters, all the characters got upright and scrambled downstairs in the direction of the spacious living room, bar, lounge. Make up your damn mind.
All those things.
And then Mayor Desrosiers lay half half supported by her husband, limp as a rag doll, her face livid with the eyes bulging horribly. So at this point, I was like, wait, so this all happened, the wraparound plot line, in the mayor's household, and we need more information at the start of this story. Are Vanessa and Amanda the mayor's daughters? If so, what was Ellie Lambert doing there? So I know this is all connected to us. This was the tipping point where it's like, what's going on?
This is when you just start crying in the shower trying to figure this out, basically.
Basically. That was my tipping point. I was just like, I don't know, where are we?
Yeah. I feel like the location needs to be mentioned up front, not at back.
Yes, and that's what we said earlier, and that's where I was getting at. It's like there's a bunch of information that's kind of just put at the beginning, or barely any information is given at the beginning, and then we get a bunch of information at the end. But by the time we get to the end, I'm like, wait, where's this? This information needs to be at the front, or at least teased at the front, and then we get the story, or the bulk of the story, and then we get the revelation. That's how a structure makes it more clear. How the structure would make it more clear. But yeah. And then we get the last bit of the story, which is its shriveled blackened digits clutched a torn and dirty photo, like the one mentioned in the story, showing those girls hovering in space in front of what looked like an old stone wall, blurry, watery smears for faces. Yet, instead of 4 lost souls like the story, there were only 3 visible. Dun, dun, dun. So the photo and hand from the events years ago that didn't seem to connect to the current situation of the girl of Ellie and her phantasmal werewolf form thing. That whole situation has found itself in this situation. Spooky. I don't know about this. The wraparound doesn't seem to give enough to support it being really connected to the bulk of the story, which is an older story that's been revised slightly and just tossed into this story to fill in the gaps, to fill in the bulk of it. And it leaves me more confused than really intrigued. I'm not gonna lie, until we just have this conversation about why the photo is there and what's going on with the photo, is it a countdown? Is it the girls the sisters, or is it some kind of sympathetic magic thing? Before we just had that conversation, I don't know, but what's going on with the story still. I've read through the story 3 times and I still don't fully understand the finer details. I know the broad strokes of what happened here, but why did it happen here?
You got to read the stories ahead first.
I know. Yes, yeah, and maybe it will make more sense when we read other stories. But as it is, as a standalone, if I was just perusing if I was just perusing Creepypasta wiki and decided to choose this one story and read it, I would be so confused.
Yeah. As we were.
Yes, as we have demonstrated. But so that's my actual thoughts. Mikey, the E stands for evil.
All right, let's see here. So, at the beginning, Ellie Lambert was dead.
Yes.
And there's no real connection as to why that has an impact on this story.
Yeah.
Other than it's part of another story, and it's well, but why is it here then?
Yes,
if it's
you're right.
part of another story, why is it part of this story? To connect to that one. Well, but we need more information as to why it matters.
Yeah,
why they're all happening in the same world.
I get that part, but yeah, I think what Mikey's saying is what does this have to do with the hand and the photo? What did Ellie die? Ellie have to do with that? I get it's part of a continuous world that is being developed across multiple stories, but you still need to give us some context in this story for that. Because that was the opening scene, and it doesn't seem to have anything to do with what we're currently like dealing with in the stories in the rest of the story.
Yeah. And then the next thing here is a quote that what I had shot just outside the front door to the guest house wasn't a hallucination or a sick, ghastly joke by some of Vanessa's goth friends, but a double. So this is Nair talking,
Yes.
and like I'm thinking photo at this point, and I was like, is he the one who took the picture of these floating girls type thing? But it just I it
Shot. I had the same thought as well.
Whoa, like you
When
saw
I
it was
said
shot.
shot, I
Okay.
assumed picture. Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
gun.
I mean, yeah, but then they'd be wanted for murder. Even
Yeah,
though
but
one of them technically already is kind of half.
yeah. Okay,
and shooting with a
that would
gun
make
makes sense because there's a picture of a freaking gun.
and that gun
No, that's the
actually,
flare gun.
yeah, that's the flare gun.
Oh,
We
it's
finally
flare.
know because
Okay.
I remember I actually drew in the title card. I drew the a steampunk like brass like flare gun, and now I know exactly what it looks like. And I
Yeah.
was off. I was kind of off.
I mean, it's not a steampunk flare gun though. It's a real flare gun from World War II.
Yes, but in the original story,
Yes.
it was referenced as a steampunk gun. Yeah,
Yes.
but sorry. Yes. Also, that well, actually no. You guys were suddenly revealing that like they didn't shoot the monster with a gun; they shot it with a camera. That makes like that I did not even perceive that.
I still don't know which it is because it just mentions that it shot the creature.
Yeah,
And then it goes on from there. So maybe it was like with a gun.
Well,
But
yeah,
we don't know.
Yeah, because like what I perceived was like they shot the phantasmal monster, and because they shot that monster, that was like the consciousness avatar of Ellie, supposedly. She died of an aneurysm or just died from psychic dump shock.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. So my next note here. Sometimes you may have really horrible days descending without any hint of warning. You wake up with a strong sense of foreboding, and you know that things will turn sour the moment you step outside. Oh, so the day will be fine then. Because nothing seems wrong, then something bad happens. But you wake up with a sense of foreboding, means you have the hint of warning.
Yeah. Also, I love how this story took it took an entire like multi-page story to get to the photo with the dread that caused her dread to get to that part to finally like get that as a callback.
Yeah. And then also in the same paragraph, the next sentence, and yet on other days, everything seems to be going great until a sinkhole suddenly opens up while we're rollerblading, or a small plane crash lands into your backyard, taking out your treehouse.
Yeah.
So I feel like this paragraph needs to be reworked to focus on the everything seems fine until something goes wrong.
Yeah.
But that waking up with a strong sense of foreboding is the exact opposite of what you're trying to say.
Yeah, because you're right, actually. Wait. Yeah. Usually like you don't like if you wake up with like a bad feeling, then you're vindicated when something actually bad happens. You're not like it doesn't suddenly just like I was having a great day and then a car crash happened in front of me. Like that kind of sours your mood. But the way it's saying it's like there's like you're not waking in that instance. Like you should be waking up like thinking everything's going to be great today, and then something bad happens.
Yeah.
Not waking up with a bad sense with a sense of dread.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're basically saying like you're fucked regardless. Like if you wake up, bad shit's okay. The way that I read the start of that is basically Nair is Debbie Downer. That's her name now. Because shit is just gonna go bad regardless.
Well, and this is
If
Olivia.
you're having a great day, it's gonna go.
Yeah.
Oh, is this Olivia's?
Olivia's story, yeah.
I forget which start this was.
I know.
Regardless,
Yeah.
yeah, it's basically just if you're having a great day, shit's gonna go bad. If you're having a shit day, well, it's gonna be a shit day regardless. You know.
Yeah. Oh, so this is what I got from. So this is the broad stroke that I got from like the overarching of the story was that she was referencing that like she was having a good day, like getting ready for camp and stuff like that, like getting on the bus, like and all that stuff, leafing through her fun like the newspaper that she likes reading through and stuff like that, and then that that photo slipped out. And that's what kind of triggered everything that we read.
Yeah,
and like
that's exactly what happened.
That was a sense of badness and foreboding because like suddenly that she got like she suddenly realized, oh shit, this photo, like what's it doing here, and why is this all shit happening hitting the fan now? But like I feel like the story is so muddied because of how it was written that like that sort of gets like lost a little bit. Especially the way like Mikey was kind of bringing up where like they reference like foreboding, like there's a sense there was no sense of foreboding it seemed from Olivia initially. It wasn't until she got the photo that popped out of her newspaper that the foreboding and dread happened. But
yeah,
unless that's what it's trying to like kind of bring up is that like the foreboding. It's not that she woke up that morning to foreboding. It's more of like she had a good day until she saw that paper and then or that photo and on her way to camp and she was like, oh no, camp's gonna be shitty or something bad's gonna happen at camp kind of thing. Maybe that's it.
yeah. And then my next note here. But it was what they told me afterwards that scared me even more than any horror movie or scary campfire story out there. Because the incident actually occurred in my hometown and would spawn a new urban legend. 2 paragraphs later. Before the infamous Gray Man incidents of 2003, nobody in the wider world gave a flying rodent's arse about this unincorporated folksy community. So, I feel like the urban legend needs to be closer to the talking about what scared her.
Yeah.
Like,
it's just really like the story's getting. Speaking of tangent police and stuff that we were talking earlier, this story has so many tangents it should be illegal. Like I feel like the tangent police would just be like raiding Curtisville constantly.
yeah. And yeah. What's been brought up before is the scene whiplash.
Yes.
So I got a lot of this because we go from being on the bus and then she's talking with her sisters and then at some point we have, without even answering my question, my sisters started pulling out sheaves of newspaper from underneath the sofa cushions and dumping them onto the living room table. And I'm like, what? Weren't we on a bus?
Well, no, because she was referencing the past when her sisters told her about the camp stuff and like all the things. So they were at home, but I understand why you're getting confused because it doesn't establish properly that past scene, that flashback.
Yeah,
we keep getting. Oh my god, we just realized. Yeah, we keep getting flashback after flashback.
Yeah, I feel like I need a neck brace.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, as you mentioned before, the first mention of the mayor's residence is near the end. Yeah. And until that point, we had no idea where the main characters were at the beginning.
We knew it was a guest house.
So, yeah, it just, bam, whiplash. Oh, we're in the mayor's residence. Oh.
Yeah, no, legit, yeah. No, I'm with you guys on this one. It was just like, that's where I made that comment. It's like, it just keeps going farther and farther into the past. Also, different locations that like are just suddenly like oh, by the way, we're here. Like there was no establishing shot. It was just like, oh, I forgot to add this this scene. Yeah, this detail. Here's the detail. By the way, we're here.
Yeah. And then let's see here. Part way through reading this, especially the note or whatever that's from 2006 or whatever that the characters are reading.
Yeah.
I knew I had read this before.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I had distinct deja vu. I was like, okay. And my mind was like, why are you reading this? It's like watching a movie that you know is bad. Why are you watching it a second time?
Ow. I will give you this again. I think I've said earlier. Yeah, the original the story that we suddenly that we and Nair are reading from like Amanda's iPad is almost identical. Like I read through it and it's like, yeah, no, the only changes are all the monsters and the kind of whimsical fantasy stuff that's added. Like they decided to downplay and make it more mundane in this version. But it's otherwise it's like almost word for word. I think, and even a lot of the grammar inquisition that we had previously seems to still be here. So, but yeah, so you had to read the story again, basically, the second time, and you weren't happy.
Yep. All right. And then my last actual thought here is, it's weird, I finally replied. Like the Marx Brothers meet H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah. This line is an insult to the Marx Brothers and H.P. Lovecraft.
Ow.
I wasn't laughing or creeped out.
I mean, I can kind of understand what they're meaning because, like, the way the sisters like deal with the specter and then like run down to their yard and like are chasing something along with a bunch of dogs. It kind of has like this weird like. It does have a bit of a slapstick kind of like routine to it.
I imagine that freaking Yakety Sax song.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, so yeah, like I get the reference to the Marx Brothers and the H.P. Lovecraft thing. I think it's a little harsh about what you're like. It does a disservice, but like because it's the character just referencing some things. It's like, but yeah,
and that's the end of my actual thoughts.
Okay, gamer.
Hi. I'm gonna try to bring a little bit of positivity into this.
Really?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, man. That's a lot of negativity to follow up on.
I was gonna say, like now feel how I feel. Like, apparently, we've just switched roles occasionally, where it's like,
yeah, apparently,
it's like how's it feel trying to stay positive when your two other co-hosts are being really negative about a story, or at least being really critical about a story?
Yeah. Fair enough. Either way. So yeah, when I first started reading it, we kind of talked about this before, but like I was confused because I didn't read the previous stories. I didn't know what was going on. So I didn't catch a lot of stuff, like with the shot, if it was a camera or not. I don't know. Regardless, moving on from that. Then you kind of mentioned this before, but not this part specifically. In other words, an ectoplasmic astral body that could detach itself during deep sleep and sally forth in animal shape or something. So like I learned a thing, technically a couple of things, because to sally forth is to go on an adventure. I've never heard of that before.
Oh, really?
No, I never heard of that. Also,
Sally forth.
I never heard that. Also, apparently it's the name of a comic strip from the 70s.
That makes sense. There's a lot
with the main character's name was Sally Forth, and she went on adventures.
Yeah, because like I've heard it a couple times. It like reference it, like again, it's usually like young, like a childish thing, or like an older like fantasy kind of stuff. It's like we must sally forth, heroes.
Yeah,
but yeah, and also that. Yeah, I was like that does make sense that there'd be a comic in the 60s or 70s. You said.
70s,
the 70s, that like because like they're all about like the silly wordplay in their comics. So
I guess I'm from the 70s then.
Yeah,
because that's also what I do.
That's true.
Yeah, I just have a very old sense of humor, I suppose.
Mhm.
Or maybe just that shit's timeless. We'll go with that.
It might be that.
Yeah. Either way, moving on.
Yes.
So we get on to the actual story. And I like how it starts. Let me scroll through real quick. How it's like specifically like titled and dated with like the in-lore writer that's listed there.
Yeah.
I like that. It basically looks like Nair copied that and posted it in here. You know, it's not just a break and that's it.
Yeah. It's probably one of the few times the story has actually given us like some information, context information about the story we're about to read.
I like that it's sectioned out and everything. Like that part, the formatting of that is good.
Horizontal lines that separate the wraparound story between like the main bulk of the story.
Yep, and the title and everything is all bolded, so it's separate from the rest of the text completely. Like that's all real good.
They use bolding for the headlines of the newspapers that are referenced by the triplets.
Do they?
Yeah, if you go,
yeah, they did.
It's not
like bold all caps though.
Bold all caps. That's fine because like newspapers usually like they go all caps or like older newspapers like tend to like do all caps for like headlines and such. So
okay, fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah, no italicization.
Yeah.
Just
it gives
bold.
bonus points just because there's no italics.
Yeah.
Unless I missed them.
I
man.
I thought I saw italics at one point.
Was there?
Oh yeah.
No,
there is.
Don't ruin this for me.
That's gonna bug me now. God, I hate italics. All right. Anyway, moving on. I got out while Dad opened the back and began unloading the essential stuff I needed for my 2-week stay at Camp Kim 2, which is 1 letter away from Camp Kim Woo, camp where you learn about kung fu, nunchucks, and dragon magic. Kim Woo is a fighter in Killer Instinct.
Okay.
And, I was like, she knows kung fu and uses nunchucks and dragon magic. Very closely named.
Yes. Clearly named for that character.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, they love Killer Instinct.
Mm.
Hang on, let me just browse over this real quick. So yeah, I'm gonna bring up the paper again. It's just we didn't talk about this specifically. The newspaper, to clarify, says like leafing absentmindedly through the pages of the usual weighty multiverse matters and Elven celebrity scandals, blah blah blah. So like it straight up says, okay, first off, when I read that, I was like, I'm sorry, what? But like, because like the newspaper is talking about multiverse matters and elves and shit like it's normal stuff. So this is a fantastical world that they're living in. So as much as they're mundanifying a lot of stuff, that's evidence right there that they're basically living in Shadowrun. Sorry, Mikey.
Or here's how I like saw this as like for continuing to mundanify it. Because in the original story, yes, it has like it's a multiverse matters and elven celebrity scandals and stuff like that. Like in the original context, it's the same thing. Like it doesn't like change any. Honestly, hasn't changed at all between the two versions.
Okay.
So in the original one, where it references all the monsters and stuff like that, it is just a regular newspaper. In this context, where like everything else is mundane, you know what this is? Multiverse Matters, which I'm thinking that's just actually the title of the newspaper tabloid. It is one of those like really weird tabloid newspapers like the Weekly World News with Batboy being married to Sasquatch, or like though I had reams and reams of the Weekly World News during when I was in high school and so that because it was such a cool, fun newspaper that was printed and sold like at Walmart and all other newsstands and stuff like that. That was complete horseshit. Just full of weird random things like Elvis, Elvis spotted out near out fishing somewhere in some lake or something like that, or like Bigfoot gets married, like all manner of like ridiculous, just dumb, fabricated like conspiracy theory, like monsters and cryptids living together in harmony in the world and their daily woes. Like it was as far as I'm concerned, it is amazing, but completely fictionalized tabloid newspaper that was just sold on newspaper stands.
Okay.
And that's
And
kind
you're
of what I
saying,
saw this as, was like, this is basically a version, another type of like Weekly World News type tabloid.
I see. And you said in the original version of this, it was just a standard newspaper?
Well, in the context of the original one, where like there are like these like where they're referencing like ghouls and vampires as the usual suspects, and like the elfin airships and stuff like that the character's referencing of and whatnot. To me, like in that context, this newspaper is actually like the Daily News, is like the more credible newspaper. That
But
just
it
talks about
does
the weirder.
directly reference it the same way
Yes, exactly.
as Elven Scandals and stuff.
Yeah.
I wonder if they just forgot to change it.
I wonder that, or again, like that's why I thought I was like, oh, this actually makes sense. Like this kid's like reads like the Weekly World News basically of this. Yeah. So like, yeah, it could either be like, and I hope it's not, honestly. Again, I really hope that the author didn't like decide to like try and like not whitewash, but like mundanify, but mundane wash their story, because that again, that magical realism aspect was really fun. So like, I really hope that this wasn't like a mistake or like a typo or like something they forgot to bring up. I hope it was actually like just like a Weekly World. It'd be fun if it was just like a Weekly World News thing in the mundane context of it, or like maybe it's like the character's own like. It could also does also kind of say like Vanessa thought like Olivia had like an overactive imagination. So like, well, look what she's reading. She's reading effectively a version of the Weekly World News. So
The Weekly World News. You've said Weekly World News so many times.
that's the name of the
I understand that.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I do wonder now that you've put that in my head, like if this was just like a missed thing that they forgot to mundanify, or
Yeah.
if it's the one thing that was allowed because it kind of just comes off as like a tabloid, like the Weekly World News.
Every time you say that, it just ching, 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 ching. Like,
I swear to God, we're not
cash
getting
register
any
noise.
Yeah, we're not getting any. We don't have any like deals with the
With
WWN.
them. Yeah.
With that newspaper or tabloid.
No, of course
It's just
not.
it was just like what came to mind when I read like Multiverse Matters and the Elven Scandals. Like, oh, this is just one of those tabloid newspapers.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because that was the one like grip in the supernatural world that I had for this story left.
I know.
And now you kind of ruined it.
No, I've abandoned my boy.
Because it's like, okay, there's cat girls, there's a elven news stuff. Okay, we're in some weird fantasy thing.
Like Kurt's still there. That's still weird. It's cool.
Yeah. So you know what?
And
No,
then-
fuck you. It's not a Weekly World
Hey, I
News
still
thing,
have my
cha-ching.
yeah. Hey, I know. I still have my theory. Like, I still maintain my theory that like everything else that's been mundanified is actually just a glamour for Nair as they're reading the article or as they're reading the story on the iPad. So it is there. It's just it's hidden away because like we're technically reading over the shoulder of Nair in this context.
And this shit's way too complicated for no reason.
Yeah, I know.
Like it does not need to be this complicated. We should not have to like have huge discussions on this.
And yet here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like with this as my grounding point in the fantastical world, later on it kind of follows up with her older sisters talking about like there's wendigos in the forest and shit. Like
yeah.
At that point I viewed like Olivia basically said, "Oh yeah, you're trying to spook me," but I viewed that as no. Her sisters are actually trying to warn her. There's literally wendigos out there.
Yeah,
like you're living in a fantastical world.
Yeah, I did also like that. It's like they're like it's like and I guess the Curtisville monster is at the camp, right? It's like no. I mean, there's you still got to deal with like Bigfoot and stuff like that. Those are the monsters that are over at the camp.
Yeah, like it straight up says that. Like
I know.
I don't know what this wants to be anymore.
I know, like
because it so plainly talks about supernatural stuff as if it's a normal thing. Yeah, but then it fights that on other counts. Because so I don't know.
And I think that part of that might be the like the author like removing or like changing the names to make it more mundane.
I guess.
And maybe missing a few things, but like, because like, this really isn't like, that's my kind of been my point. Like, this isn't really a retelling. They copy pasted the original story and just changed some names. They didn't actually do any retelling aside from the wraparound story. But those wraparound bits aren't really integrated properly into the original story material.
Because like the passing down of this creature is already happening in Olivia's story.
Yeah.
Like it already went from from one number down to another one, and then it just goes down another in the wraparound.
Yeah. Like, I guess that's the one thing that was like added, is that like this photo does seem to pop up in circumstances of strange like deaths or encounters, and is slowly like losing girls in the photo as a result. Like, maybe there's some kind of count, maybe not like an actual countdown, but effectively a countdown, because they're using the girls that are hovering in the photo as like a sort of a measurement, or as like a as a resource of magic, maybe.
I saw it as it's basically like a glimpse into the future of what's going to happen to these targets.
Yeah,
because they just go missing. We don't know what happens.
Yeah, well, yeah, because in the past, like 5 girls went missing, and then this photo showed up
of 5 girls floating there with their faces obscured.
Yeah, and then actually, and then in Olivia's sister's story, or I guess maybe not even Olivia's sister story, maybe in like Olivia's story specifically, like when she's on the bus and stuff like that, perhaps like somebody goes missing at the camp that we just don't know about yet, and that's why there's a 4th one missing, or maybe that 4th person that like the one person that's missing of the 5 in Olivia's version of the photo was the was Jane, because she was like the spectral like ghost figure. And then the one that went missing in the photo in the present, like in the wraparound bit, was Ellie dying, kind of thing. Like you're saying, like it's basically, it is premonition. It's kind of like foretelling the death of various girls on top of like the 5 that went missing in the past.
Yeah, it's like is it the ring when like there's like a phone call or some shit? It's like 7 days or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, that's the ring.
Yeah, it's that. Just it's a picture. This shit's about to happen.
Yeah, so
that's the way I saw it.
Lines. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a death omen, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. One of us is probably right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Pratt, if you do listen to this and check it out, maybe a little some clarification might be nice.
Perhaps.
Or you could also just tell us, like, read other stories, like, or we're just like we're just so hung up on this one story, and we are supposed to read a bunch of other stories. But
to be honest, like, our opinions right now should mean like Dick Diddley until we read everything else. Yeah, because we don't have proper context.
Yeah, or at least should be like have some like our views here and our opinions here should be put with a grain of salt, because we don't have the full story because we haven't read a bunch of the other stories yet. So
yeah, and once we get 1 or 2 stories in our pockets, I'm probably going to redo my recommendations of this story once things have been clarified, assuming things get clarified.
Well, we shall see.
Yes.
Look to the fall, guys, because we're going to be doing a bunch of these stories in starting in like 2 weeks. So
yes, I'll move on.
Yes.
So it's it goes on describing how there's identical quadruplets. How do you pronounce that? Doesn't matter. Quadruplets. There you go. Thank you. And but one of them's a bat monster. So
yeah,
how, like, is it a identical twin if one of them is a disgusting bat monster?
Well, I think they do reference it like they were
from the get-go
modified and stuff like that. So like they do reference it like they were all perfect because of genetic manipulation. And so like the last one, like it looks like it should look like them, except it's also something went wrong and it became more monstrous. But like it still kind of looks
like basically right out right at the gate, it looked weird, but they were still calling it an identical twin.
Yeah.
And then my next note is just learning the word I didn't figure out how to pronounce this. Syndactyly.
Oh yeah, I gave up on that one.
Yeah.
I know what it means, but I gave up on how to say it.
Syndactyly.
Yeah.
That's probably that. It's basically when two of your digits are fused together.
Yeah, like Thane Krios from Mass Effect.
Oh yeah.
that pregnant pause was amazing. It's just like
Loading information.
like, wait, Thane? Yeah, no, I think they'd had the same thing. Like she like two fused hands or two fused fingers. So
actually, okay. My next one is just I'm mentioning the whiplash at the end. I already talked about that. So my last note is basically just overall, this was going to be in the final, but I brought it back into standard notes. Overall, this is basically a story telling a story disguised as another story. Thank you, Tropic Thunder. But in doing so, it's like so far removed from the actual creep that's happening. Yet to me, it was still creepy when the creep did happen, which is a feat with considering how many layers away from it is. The creep being that there's this creature that is like basically picking a target of a family and just erasing them and then moving on to another one. And like you see it being passed down through families.
Oh yeah,
and
like the
them
photo,
just disappearing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
I think that is supposed to. I think that's supposed to be the overarching, like focused mystery here is the photo transferring between like incidences.
Yeah, like basically my partial recommendation of this story is based on that story. Nothing to do with the not werewolf, the shot at the start, which is maybe a bullet, maybe a camera. None of that. It's about the transfer of the photo. That is what this story is about. And that's what my thoughts are basically focused on. But also, like, this is someone recounting a story that happened to them 6 years ago. And I did find it odd how accurate their memory is, like going into explicit detail about what her sisters would say, like while they banter and interrupt each other. It's like word for word. Meanwhile, you're writing this down 6 years after the fact. I can't remember what happened word for word last week. The previous recording.
I mean, to be fair though, stories do that all the time. Like authors do that in stories all the time.
Oh, I know.
It may not be that like they know they actually know like word for word. They're writing. They have the cliff notes, and then so they're just like kind of like writing as if they were told it. Like so, they basically like trying to get the broad strokes in finer detail.
Yes, and that works when it's like, and I'm not omniscient narrator stuff, but this is Olivia writing this down, something that she remembers from 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So I feel like it should be kind of glossed over a little more, not be so specific with all the wording, with all the interruptions and stuff.
That's true. I mean, the counterpoint to that is that like you'd also don't like it may not if you write it that way, it might be too vague and may not be interesting to read. So like like you see like authors do this all the time where like they recall something and then have these scenes where it's like scene for like dialogue for dialogue conversation that like the character should not know that that dialogue exactly the way it was, but there's a little bit of leeway with that because like they're being a little more flowery because they're writing this into a story. Even when there's no, even when they are the narrator and not like an omniscient one, they still do that kind of stuff. So
I see Olivia is basically, she remembers the Cliff Notes version of what her sister said, and basically is writing down sentences that they said as a light quote, not a direct quote.
Yeah, and I mean, she is going to a writer's camp, so there is a precedence here for her to be kind of be a creative writer. So,
should I bring up the fact that we're having so much problem with the writing about a story about a character that's going to writing camp?
Oh my god.
I probably shouldn't bring that up.
Probably not.
Good thing I didn't. Anyways,
so
that's the end of my notes, honestly, until finals.
All right.
Until finals. When am I in school? Jesus Christ.
Until final thoughts.
What's wrong with me?
All right. So on to final thoughts then. This iteration, I'm not gonna lie, confused me quite a bit regarding the wraparound plot and its connection to the original story, that was Olivia's blog site kind of story that we got, the plot, like that plot. Again, I guess it was to introduce the photo and how it's been changing over like multiple encounters. That I'm just getting that now though, like after we've had like a 2-hour long conversation about things like this.
Yeah.
And after I've read the story 3 times and it's now finally clicking for me.
Yeah, that's like, not to interrupt, but like that's the problem, is like there's too much going on in the story,
Yeah.
basically.
That's it. Actually, I think right there.
Yeah, it doesn't focus on what the story is. It's focusing on all the stuff that happens around the main story as much as it's focusing on the actual plot of the story, which I think the plot should take precedence.
Yeah, and honestly, like from the original story, like all the stuff that was mundanified in this version, I feel kind of ruins the story, because with all that information that we had, like with the mention of like the Chick Charnies and the Goblin Market and stuff of that, that was world building. So like I enjoyed that aspect of it. So it was
Bring back Wolf Cop.
Yeah, bring back Wolf Cop. Yeah.
Hashtag where's Wolf Cop?
But yeah, like I think like by removing the fantastical element, you're kind of showing the glaring issue of how much like guff there is. That's muddying the vision or muddying the focus of the story. Because if you add those other things in and you treat it like a mundane thing, like again, magical realism stuff, it feels like whimsical and like world building, and like so you're willing to give the story a little bit more of a pass, because like what's this crazy weird stuff that's going on that's being treated like a Monday, like everyday life, like slice of life stuff. So yeah, it's just like there is some cool stuff here, and there is, like, as we've talked here, there is a mystery afoot that was just starting to unfold actually. But then the story stops like right at the end, like when things were starting to like be revealed, it just kind of comes to an end. And like there's clearly some connections to other stories that we do need to read, and we are going to read and look at, and hopefully that will give us more context to this version of the story, and like it might bring to light some things that we aren't really getting as we're just reading this story as a standalone. But like the fact still kind of remains, like I do feel like even when you're doing that kind of thing, for like where you're creating like a stepping stone set of stories to get to an overarching mystery, you still need to like make the story, the story you're telling in that moment coherent, and sort of like give it context that it can be read on its own as well, and not just simply like a chapter in a series of stories that are all just chapters for a greater whole. Like yeah, the greater whole. So yeah, it's just to me it was sort of like, as it is right now, that's I can't recommend this story as it is right now, because I was left so confused and discombobulated by what was going on. Maybe once we've read a bunch of the other stories that were connected, or that are supposed to be connected to this one, I'll get more context that I'll appreciate this more, and maybe give it a partial or even a full recommendation. As it is though, for me now, I can't recommend this one. So
that's fair. You know what it almost feels like?
Yep.
I'm gonna interrupt. You know what it almost feels like? It almost feels like this story starts directly when another story ends.
Yeah,
including like where that story explains like who Amanda is, or Vanessa, I forget which one, Vanessa, who Vanessa is, where they are, how this has a connection to the mayor that we all know about. Like it feels like it directly connects after that. Yeah,
like I have a feeling. So here's what we got. So there's a story that was so we were given we got a comment from MM Pratt from our previous story, like I had mentioned way at the beginning of this episode. They gave us a bunch of stories to read after we read Summer Break, the original one of which was a prequel to Summer Break. And then there's this retelling, which is the one we're doing right now. So I have that in our roster, like the prequel to the original Summer Break. I think maybe the Ellie Lambert story might basically give us the prelude into like what we just kind of stumbled into with this story. Because it's about Ellie before she died. And then there's the other ones like the short hogger, which is referenced, but that's again like that's the 4 stories that we need to cover, which we will in like the next couple of weeks or months.
4 stories in 7 weeks from now.
I mean, kind of, yeah.
Did you get where I was going with that?
No, sorry.
4 score and 7 years ago.
Ah,
I did a
Pressure,
thing
Abe.
that no one got.
Yeah. Once you finally explained it, I got it.
Yeah, that's the best kind of jokes.
Yeah,
You have
clearly.
to fully explain and then no one laughs at after the fact. I love those jokes. Fuck me.
So, Mikey, these days for evil. What's your final recommendation? And your final thoughts?
Well, the final thought is, well, it's a rehashing of a story we've already done. And as Cultus has pointed out, it removed some of the fantastical stuff that was originally there.
Mhm.
And if I recall correctly, I think I liked that a bit more because, Wolf Cop.
Wolf Cop.
Yeah.
Which Wolf Cop actually isn't in the original version of this story, but he was in like
Yeah.
I think we reference him in like a story or two before that one, before summer break.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, so the issue with the scene with Lash really did not help this story. For me anyway. And at the end of it, what do we have? A photo with a slightly
Murderous
different
intent.
number of girls.
It's a photo with murderous intent, is what it is.
yeah.
Yeah. So and like for stuff that we get that's new, we don't actually get a whole lot new because they basically put a wraparound for a different story, and the wraparound is actually really short in comparison. They could just literally have been, oh, this is what we're reading, and here's a link to that previous story, and then
Yeah, honestly,
bam.
yeah. No, like legit that. Yeah.
Wraparound does muddy everything. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
Yes. So, as it stands, I'm still not recommending this.
That is fair. Gamer.
So for me, when you finally get to the actual premise of the story, it's good in my opinion, because I like the whole point of the story of the creature that's kidnapping people and doing God knows what with them and moving on to a different host family. That's cool. But like reading this, there's like so many characters to keep track of, and so many characters that we don't already know. And like we said before, it's assumed that we know them, even though like they're not all introduced fully. So jumping into this in the middle of this series is like the most media res of media res, and yeah, that part bugged the hell out of me.
Yeah. It's like if Media Res and Inception had a baby.
Yeah, that's true because it's so many layers deep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I can't properly even give a right recommendation, like due to being thrown in the deep end here. Like, should I be viewing this as a story that stands on its own? If that's the case, I can't recommend it because there's so much not told.
Yeah.
If I'm recommending it as it is, as just one story, you read it and you're done. But it doesn't stand on its own. There's assumed knowledge from the previous 2 entries and ones that follow it apparently as well. So like most of these characters in the world setting should be explained in all this. So if that's the case, then sure, I'll recommend it. But as it is, because I've had like such a struggle trying to understand the setting and the characters, yet I like where it went by the end, I have to give it a partial because I do like the MO of the monster. I just don't like how deep in the mud the monster is. I had to dig them out.
You had to wrench him out of the mud.
Yeah.
Now that it's all fair assessments of the story.
And we didn't talk about it at the end when like it's out of the box literally, and it's like some weird like spidery thing that's made out of like human fingers and stuff.
Oh, I think that was just like how they were describing it, like the gnarled, desiccated hand was like a spider.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right, because it was just I thought it was like some weird actual like
No,
bug
like
monster
it was
that
being
had actual
metaphorical.
hands.
Yeah, I think it was
It's
being metaphorical. Yeah. Yes, thank you,
Fair enough.
Taserface. Or no, that's Taser. Is it Taserface? Yeah, it is Taserface.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll say I'm with you, gamer. With this is like I was a little bit more like decisive of like I can't recommend this as it is, like as a standalone, but like maybe once we've read a bunch of the other stories that are connected, it might shed some light on this, and it might make like this like it's the sum of its parts kind of thing. Like this plus the other stories, like build a better story, like build a better whole kind of thing.
Mm.
So, but yeah, so still partial recommendation then.
Yeah, overall a partial because there's aspects I really like about it, but there's aspects I really don't like about it. And depending on whether you're reading this in order or if you're just thrown in the deep end, that's I can't narrow it down because there's so much I like and dislike about it, which is kind of partial. So
Fair.
Partially recommend it. But my thoughts will probably change for the better or the worse when I have more context.
Yeah. Also, every time you say like I'm being tossed into the deep end, I can feel accusatory eyes on me for doing that.
I wasn't trying to, but yeah.
Like, you can't see me. You don't know what I'm doing. You don't know I'm staring directly at you in your direction.
How dare you? But yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's it then for tonight. That'll do it for this week's episode. So 2 non-recommendations and then 1 partial recommendation. Honestly, the one of the non-recommendations is also kind of conditional if you've read other stories of like perhaps if you've read other stories that are connected to this one, like maybe it'll make it better.
Mm-hmm.
But that'll have to wait until we have read some of those other stories, which will be coming up at some point in the very near future. But that's it for tonight. So if you like what you heard, or if you didn't, leave us a comment in the comment section below where this gets posted. We're all on Twitter, kind of. Mikey is at the E stands for evil. The Gamer in Yell is at the Gamer in Yell, but without that W at the end because his name is very long.
Yeah.
And I'm at Review Cultist. I'm also on Blue Sky as Review Cultist, so you can send me stuff there. You can also send us emails at aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. That's ALDENTERIGAMORTIS@gmail.com. Where you can also leave us suggestions for other creepypastas, SCPs, spooky things. You creep it, we'll peep it. Yeah! And if you'd like to help support our show financially, you can go to Patreon. Select the backer tier you'd like to support us at. We have $2 and $5 tiers with special episodes, early access, and extra content. To our patrons that are helping support the show, thank you immensely. You're helping keep those hosting bills at bay. And as always, we very much appreciate that. And to our listeners and the authors of these stories, thank you immensely. Because without your listenership, it'd be like screaming into the void. And without your authorship, without these stories that you write and create, and these worlds and settings that you create and post online for people to enjoy and read through, we really wouldn't have much of a show because we'd have nothing to talk about. Like seriously, Curtis, like as much gripe as we gave this story, like I genuinely want to read more about Curtisville and like the stories of M.M. Pratt. Like they are like genuinely interesting to me, and I look forward to them whenever we get to them. So
I think next time you need to really hold on to the idea that you're in Shadowrun. Sorry, Mikey, because it makes it better, in my opinion.
It do.
If you try to struggle with it not saying that it is or isn't, that seems to be where the problem is.
Well, I still like the idea. I still really like the idea that if like the reason why Nair isn't reading that in the story is because there's some kind of glamour or something on the story, to conceal it from the normies, basically.
Mm.
But But I digress. So thank you out there those who write these stories and post them online. Until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey. The E stands for evil.
I'm the gamer in yellow.
And this has been Al Dente Rigamortis. Sleep well.